What's going on, everybody? This is Ian Walker here with a new video of GUYVER Generations, the live Rising Legends solo play using the Mythic 2nd edition game emulator engine, as well as the Rising Legends tabletop game, which is my own personal tabletop gaming system. And so, first things first, I want to give a huge apology to you guys who might have been waiting over the next couple of weeks, who had been waiting over the next couple of weeks for the next episode of GUYVER. And a lot of stuff was going on this week, so I really apologize for the delay in this next episode. I'm going to be filming a couple more episodes of this solo play, this live solo play, so that I can put them out more consistently. My dog died, so I was a little down, was not in the mental headspace in order to do a video, and was just trying to collect my thoughts and everything to give you guys a quality game. So I decided to take some time off and take care of that. Of course, it would happen as soon as I start, putting together a regular deal on my YouTube channel. But, tis is life. So, anyways, what I wanted to do this week, before we hop right in, because I do want to get right to the game, I have a new tool that I'm going to be introducing. Now, I'm going to have the link to this in the description below, as well as everything else that you'll need to keep playing. This is a condensed cheat sheet of the Mythic GM Emulator. As you guys know, before, when I started, I was playing with my self-bound Mythic GM Emulator. As you guys know, I was flipping through pages, figuring out, and this is cool and everything. I want to have it, but I found a smaller version, a single sheet that you can use for your solo role playing, and this is probably going to be better for most of you playing solo games, especially if you're using Mythic. It has the fate chart, has all of the chaos factors here. It has the action meaning tables that you have that are necessary here in order to adjust certain things in the game. Your scene adjustment table, your Randus focus event table. So all of that stuff is here in one single sheet. So like I said, I'm going to post the link to that in the video below, in the description below of this video, so that you guys can go ahead and get access to that. So in case you guys haven't gotten a chance yet to get the GM Emulator, if you haven't gotten the book yet, you can also get the link to this as well. Now, this does not replace the full book. Like I said, if you're using Mythic, I really do encourage you to go ahead and eventually buy the book so that you'll have a full understanding of how the game plays. But if you do already have that understanding, this cheat sheet is very helpful and very useful in that, especially if you're wanting to contain your solo roleplay pack pretty much, and your sessions. I can fold this up in half, place this inside of my book here, and we're good to go. I just need to carry this book with me with a pen and whatever else. So this is very cool to have. So I definitely suggest that you go ahead and grab this if you're just starting, and then eventually you'll grab a copy of that book. Again, all the links for all this will be available below in the description of this video. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on and get started with the next episode of GUYVER Generations. All right. So in the previous episode, in episode 1, Target Mayson had made his way to the Chronos Corporation Science Building. And he was able to evade some guards, got on the roof, looked down and peered in, and saw the laboratory where he saw Chronos scientists working on various Zoanoids, as well as a suspected bio armor unit that he had gotten some information on from a source within Chronos. Making his way there, he found that he was finally intercepted by some Zoanoid soldiers and actually ran into an old friend who used to be a part of his old military unit. His name was Tom. And not realizing what the situation was, Mayson had tried to do his best to free his friend Tom or help him to escape. But Tom seemed to be a little bit rattled about what was going on. So he took off, and he was intercepted by 2 Chronos military soldiers. And what ended up happening was that these soldiers intercepted Tom, and they got into a battle. During that time, Tom finally saw that his friend had already been optimized into a Zoanoid, but he was an unfinished version of Zoanoid that he was unsure of. It looked kind of familiar to him, but he wasn't quite sure, which ended up being an unfinished, optimized version of Ramochis here. I took the time in my journal here to draw out each of the Zoanoids here, so that you guys who are watching could probably get a little bit of a purview of what those Zoanoids look like. As the channel continues and as I continue with the campaign, I'm going to be doing some other things to kind of add to the flavor of the live plays here. But finding that out, the 2 Zoanoid creatures were actually of the Gregoyle model here, which you can see, and for the first time, Mayson came in contact with Zoanoids. One of the Zoanoids took off after Tom, who had tried to escape, and the other one went after Mayson. And in the last battle, Mayson ended up being taken on completely by Gregoyle. He was no match for him physically, and ended up being thrown into the lab. He hit one of the consoles, which actually opened up and revealed an opening, which revealed 3 triangular shaped, smaller triangular shaped, or rounded triangular shaped objects with a metal circle in the middle there. And the device fell face down on the floor and clicked and then flipped up. And suddenly, as Gregoyle was going for Mayson, the unit activated and its tendrils spread out and attacked Mayson. Last week I stopped the campaign there, so we're going to go ahead and continue from that point. So right now in Mythic, we're going back here because again this is a tutorial on how to use Mythic GM Engine, so I want to make sure that I'm giving you guys the information here. So with every scene that we change into, we want to make sure that we up the chaos factor for each one. This is a situation where Mayson pretty much does not have control of this situation whatsoever. Okay, so with that being said, we want to make sure that we up the chaos factor here and make that. So before, we were at chaos factor 6, I believe, here. So now that the situation is getting a bit more tense, we are now working at chaos factor 7. At the beginning of every scene, or at the beginning of every session, the chaos factor will go up by 1 or go down depending on the mood of the situation. And seeing as Mayson is in huge trouble right now, he's getting attacked by some kind of weird device, we justify that by changing that factor up to 7 here. Alright, so now we know, so that's the roll, so that is the part of the fate chart that we're going to be rolling on during this specific session. So, as the Gregoyle is approaching Mayson, he stops in his tracks as he sees the unit has exploded and its tendrils are jutting forth towards Mayson. What I want to do is, just in case, because, and this is only because Mayson has a military background, military training. We're going to, again, using Chaos Factor 7, I'm going to go right into a roll to see if Mayson is able to try to dodge this these tendrils coming at him. He's unsure of what they are. I'm going to put very unlikely, okay, at a Chaos Factor of 7. So in order for it to be positive, we need to hit an 18 or under, but it's going to be very unlikely. Okay, so let's go ahead and make that roll here. All right, so 46% here. Again, reading the hundreds dice here, you got your hundreds place here and then your 10, so that equals 46%. So Mayson does not dodge these tendrils that are attacking him. The tendrils then begin to wrap around his body. The people around him in the lab are scurrying away. If you have weirdly, let's take a look here. I'm going to make another roll here on the chaos deal here, and I'm going to say very likely here. I'm going to make a roll here, very likely, of course, 80% here. So very likely. So what we have in here is you have some scientists that are running around, scurrying as they see the Gregoyle crash through the through into the lab, and it's tossed this man here. The unit is activating, and these tendrils are wrapping around Mayson. But curiously, you have some scientists there that have decided to kind of, even though they're scared of the situation, they decided to kind of stick around and kind of observe what is going on. At this point now, Mayson is being wrapped around, and these tendrils not only wrap around his body, but they start to burn. As if they burn into his skin, they burn through his clothing. And Mayson lets out this gut-wrenching scream. It feels like at the same time as these tendrils are wrapping into his body, they're entering into certain orifices in his body. It's not only wrapping him and squeezing him tightly, but they're also burning in his skin. So his whole body feels like it's on fire at the same time. Mayson is screaming and doing everything that he can. Everyone around him is kind of standing there in shock. Mason's body then starts to react in a weird way, just kind of like a fight or flight mode. And his body jerks up, and he's rocking around, screaming, trying to pull the tendrils off him. But each time he tries to pull these tendrils off of his skin, it's as if the tendrils have claws that are digging even further into his skin, further making the pain much worse. As he's doing this, he flails his body around in the lab. Things just getting broken all over the place, and everything is just watching. The Gregoyle, the Chronos soldier, then tries to intercept Mayson as this is happening to him. But one of the scientists catches him, and he looks at him, and he gives him a glaring look and holds his hand up as if to tell him, "Stay where you are. Don't move." Because the scientist is weirdly wanting to observe this situation and what's going on. What I'm going to do is I'm going to make another roll here to see if there is, if one of the scientists, 73%. So again, most definitely. One of the scientists notes something on Mason's person, and he recognizes the dog tags that he wears on his person. And he goes over and he quickly scurries over to a computer during all this chaos. He looks on the computer and he enters and he looks up all the information, and sure enough, on that computer, Mason's file and his image pops up on the computer. It seems that Chronos has had a file on Mayson, and is indeed has been tracking him for some time. And when this happens, the scientist his face kind of lights up, and he looks again over at Mayson. Again, things, he's thrashing around, flailing. And finally, what happens is he trips over this vat, which looks like that's sitting in the corner of a room, which has a vat of this strange liquid. He's not sure really what's in there, but Mayson flails and he trips back and he falls into this liquid. And this steam just goes off from this liquid, and soon the mood kind of dissipates and everything starts to calm down. Alarms are sounding and blaring all over the place, and now everyone is standing there in shock to see what's happening, what's going on. One of the scientists turns to the Gregoyle. He says, "Leave us. Go and wanted to go and detransform back into one of the vats in order to turn back into his normal form." So the Gregoyle actually goes and takes off, and one of the other scientists that ended up staying with him, because there's two in the room, they look and see, like, hey, there's, what are we gonna do? And at this moment, they decide that this is exactly what we've been looking for. We wanted to optimize him, but now it looks like we have an opportunity for something greater to happen. Something greater has happened, and this is our chance to gather all the information that we can. So now these two scientists head over to the vat where Mayson fell into, and they look inside and they see his body is now covered in these tendrils, and it's like, again, these tendrils are moving all over his body, and soon the tendrils are now starting to pulsate, and then all of a sudden start to slowly disappear into the skin, and it's really grotesque looking. If you imagine bacon cooking in the skillet, that's kind of what it looks like, and is on the inside of the vat. It looks like bacon boiling and bubbling. And so that's what's happening at this point. The scientists run over and call some other people there as everything's starting to calm down. They come over and they activate a machine, which then reaches down and grabs Mayson out of the vat of water. And at this point, the body, and Mason's body, is lifeless. He's inside of he's wrapped up in this, what now is starting to look like a cocoon of tendrils, and it's lifeless. So as they're lifting the body out of the vat, they turn it over in this machine. It lifts them up, and some of the scientists are operating it. There's another large, what looks like a Bacta tank of some sort, which is where they obviously optimize other humans, that turns them into Zoanoids, and they lift him into one of these tanks, and they leave him in there, and into another type of liquid, which then leaves Mayson suspended in this liquid as the transformation or whatever is happening continues. So now we head over. Mayson is now unconscious. The scientists continue their work. They start to hook up all sorts of gear, and they start to they bring up his file inside of the room, and they are now examining him fully. They start to run a whole gamut of tests on him. They start to see what's going on. And if you look at the screen, you see now that the image of the device, the rounded triangular shaped device, is flashing on the screen, and next to it is Mayson. And they run a simulation on there to see what could possibly happen. So they continue running their tests. Now, these tests happen over a couple of days, and as this is happening now, it's been about, we're going to time jump a little bit, it's been a few days now. Mayson is inside of the tank, and now that Mayson is completely nude inside of the tank, the tendrils that wrapped him like a cocoon are now no longer visible on his body. He seems to be completely healed of any wounds that he had. There's no sign of anything that seems to have happened to him. Mayson is now in the water, and he starts to come to. And as he comes to, he's looking around, and and now he realizes he's inside of this vat of liquid. And somehow, for some reason, he doesn't usually when you have someone inside of a tank like that, they have a mask on over their face, but he doesn't have one. And it kind of freaks him out really quick. So he looks around and sees that he's in this environment. He looks out and realizes that he's trapped in a glass tank, and he starts punching at the window, and he can't get out, and a panic starts to set in. Alarms and things start going off, indicating that he's awake, and outside, scientists and other people start running in, seeing that they observe what's going on, and they continue to start running tests. Finally, what happens, or not finally, but suddenly, this electrical surge comes into the tank, and he is now suddenly zapped with a huge amount of electricity. Now, what we're going to do, in order to see if this affects him, we're going to make 2 rolls with or make 2 separate rolls of a d20. And so, again, in the Rising Legends system, how attacks and things work, because this would count as an attack, you will take 2 20-sided dice. So one is usually from the DM or the Oracle, and the other is from the player. And you roll them both. The highest roll means that it succeeded. And so as the opponent, I rolled higher than the enemy here. So the enemy attacked, but my roll is higher. So as electricity begins to enter, at first he feels something like, and he feels a surge through his body, but nothing happens. He doesn't take any damage. He doesn't feel anything happening. But he does feel that something was attempted on his body. They try it again on him. And this time, the second time, we got an 18 versus a 4. So this did happen. So once again, they did it again at a higher voltage. And now he's, takes the damage and feels electricity coursing through his body. He kind of lets out a muffled scream, because of course he's in the liquid. But it doesn't do a damage per se. He does take a limited amount of damage. And so what we'll do, because he does feel it, we're going to roll a 1d4 damage for that. And so Mayson is going to take 3 points of I guess you could call it electric damage. So we'll mark that here on the sheet like so, at 3 there. But what has happened now is that he's now become, completely, freaked out by the entire situation. Actually, let's let Mick decide what Mason's reaction is going to be. Let's do that. Again, this is a situation, we're going to keep this at Chaos level 7. So, we're going to say very likely that Mayson we know Mayson is freaking out, right? He's in a situation, he doesn't know what to do, he can't get out. So we're going to go very likely. We'll roll the dice here, 95%. Yeah. Mayson definitely starts freaking out. He doesn't know what's going on. And as he starts to freak out, he feels something happening, and his breathing starts to get harder. His breathing starts to get more labored, and his adrenaline starts pumping even more. As they watch him getting more erratic, the scientists again attack him and try to pump him with more electricity, trying to control him. And this time it's a tie. They both rolled a 5 here. And this time, again, Mayson feels it coming through to him, but he continues starting to thrash around. And they continue pumping him with electricity. More time. And this time they rolled a 3. Mayson rolls a 5. Nothing happens, but now his body, he feels something now happening in his body. We're going to roll. I'm going to roll on the fate chart a nearly certain on this chart here. Okay? 26%. Okay, so definitely. So, after this, something begins to happen on his body. And as he's thrashing around, suddenly he stops. He feels a warm feeling, a tingling sensation happening throughout his body. Finally, this warmth starts to begin growing from his toes and generates all the way up through his body. And those that warm tingling feeling then starts to become pins and needles, almost similar to the same burning that he felt when he was encased by those tendrils that had happened to him days earlier. As that feeling starts to rise to his body goes into pins and needles, and it seems to travel throughout his body, all the way up and into his back, which then hits his brain, which hits the back of his brain, and suddenly shoots into this awareness to where then things in his body, his mind just seems to go blank. His vision in front of him goes dark. And then suddenly he feels that tingling feeling that goes in his brain elevates down to his upper back, which seems to radiate down into his shoulder blades. And suddenly his eyes, he closes his eyes and it goes dark. And then suddenly in the water, these tendrils shoot out from his back, similar to the tendrils that had wrapped around his body. And they shoot out with so much force that they start hitting the glass that's surrounding him. And as it's happening, the scientists inside are observing this happening. They're starting to freak out. They're hitting the button again to try to induce the electrical signal, but this time nothing's happening. It's not even affecting him. It's almost as if his body is acting on its own. These tendrils continue to hit the glass and crack it and shatter. And suddenly, boom, other tendrils exude from all parts of his body, from his arms, from his legs, all from the back of his back, and they shatter the glass. The water from the tank spills all over the lab, and as these tendrils happen, he still remains, even though he's no longer in the water, he still remains floating in the air. The tendrils are floating around his body, and suddenly each of the tendrils wrap around his body, all around his arms, his hands, his torso, his feet, his face and everything, and they create this hard, which almost looks like this carapace type of armor, and the armor kind of goes from like this greenish color to a brown color, and wraps all around his body until finally you see, and he has this armor wrapped around his body. At this point, when you look, he looks up, he opens his face, or he opens his eyes, and suddenly he's left with only one image, with the image remaining here. And I'm going to show you guys a picture that I drew. And this is what the scientists, as they look up and see in pure terror, there's this metal thing that appears in the middle of his forehead, and then that a metal image reveals in his forehead that glows with intense energy and a bright light that then starts to shine, so much so that it blinds everybody in the lab, so they got to cover their eyes. And he lifts his head and he sees that he's turned into this armored warrior. And finally, to reveal, this is the look of what we see here. One of the scientists looks at him, terrified of what has just happened, and the other scientist next to him is kind of smiling, almost looking at it as if glaring and smiling almost maniacally at a beautiful creation that he just made. And he looks at him and he just simply says this one word, and he says, "Guyver Alpha." We're going to stop there for today. So, I want to, in an effort to keep these things short, I hope you guys like the design of Guyver. I drew this myself, so pretty soon we're going to I'm going to show you guys a full-on picture of the Guyver here, this version of the Guyver. and his full name and everything. As this series continues, of course, like I said, I'm going to be giving you guys more insight, and I want to add an art component to this as well, so you guys will start seeing pictures and drawings and stuff, because I am a comic book artist, so I do that type of thing. Giving you guys more of that as well, so that you guys can start having a little bit more of a mind's eye with what's going on, and also keeping the sessions short and sweet so that they're more digestible for you guys. So that is where we're going to stop this week. I hope I was able to answer some questions, what's going on. So the next episode is going to be, we're going to be bumping it up to a chaos factor of 8, again, because everything is out of control. You see what I did there? Out of control. Okay, so so we're going to start there with next week's episode, and I hope you guys are ready to join me next week for another episode of GUYVER Generations. Again, if you guys want a sample of the sheet here, that's going to be in the description below. Also for a link for a copy of the actual Mythic book, as well as a copy of Rising Legends that you can grab on DriveThruRPG. You can get it there as well. So thank you guys so much for joining me this week, and I'll see you guys next week on another episode of GUYVER Generations. Take care.